Good evening and welcome to the Sound Off Show. My name is Linda Kirker. I host the program, and thank you so much for tuning in tonight. These are tough times and we all need a little bit of entertainment, mostly TV, I would guess, or telephone calls, or computers, or whatever. But thanks for joining us tonight. In a few minutes, I'll be introducing my guest. I'm looking forward to doing that. But I got to thinking with this COVID thing that we're all having, we're being controlled by based on a few words, but I think we have to remember that there are better things lying ahead for us. And patience is important. It's frustrating, but it's important. I'm going to start now with a few years ago, actually in June of 2018. Before I introduce my guest, I want to share this with you. I wrote a poem, and I would be happy to have you hear it. Here we go. The land of the free and the home of the brave. I'm grateful to live in the land of the free, a gift that was given to you and to me by America's founding fathers, heroes all, who in their fight for freedom all stood tall and pledged their fortunes and their lives so that they and their descendants could happily thrive. Today we're faced with a similar fight to preserve our freedom and protect our precious rights, to ensure for our children a future that is bright. With individual rights, freedoms, and opportunities galore, I wonder, will we stand up to defend these blessings and more? Or will we allow evil to spread throughout our land because we did not watch, speak out, nor raise a hand? Will our children be taught right from wrong? Will our young patriots be taught to proudly sing our nation's songs, our national anthem, and God Bless America? Will they stand and happily pledge allegiance to our American flag? Will they understand our unique Constitution and Bill of Rights? It is up to each one of us to shine that bright light, for they are the future defenders of all that makes America great. Our nation has no room for divisiveness, bitterness, and hate. We had better stand up before it's too late. For united we stand, divided we fall. To stand united, we must answer the call to defend America once and for all. Do we have the wisdom, the courage, and the will to stand up and fight, to preserve America's unique blessings with all of our might? Without citizen involvement and vigilance, our rights will be taken away. That surely would be a very sad day. Let there be light from above to guide us, and the love of God to strengthen us. May God bless America, our national flag, our national anthem, our Constitution, our citizens, and all who serve and strive to protect and honor them in the land of the free and the home of the brave. I don't deny that I'm a patriot, and that came from my heart one day. I was just sitting there, and all of a sudden there it was, and so I just wanted to share it. Thank you for listening. Now it's my pleasure and honor to introduce my guest. I've been really looking forward to having him on the show. I'm sure many of you know him. He is Rear Admiral. No, I have a sense of humor. Rear Admiral Warren Hamm. He lives in Franklin County, and he's a fine gentleman and someone who served for many, many years in our U.S. Naval Forces. And correct me now, Warren, the show is yours. What did I leave anything out in my introduction? I'm going to ask you to tell us about your Navy experience, and I'm sure it's going to be really interesting. But did I do okay with your introduction, or do I need?
Yes, yes, you pass.
I pass. Well, I'll accept a passing grade.
Well, first of all, I want to give you well done on that poem.
Oh, thank you.
I think I'll allude to it during the talk.
Fine.
But I am a little concerned. You said we were going to provide the audience with entertainment. I tell you, I don't sing, nor do I dance.
Well, I'll do both.
If I danced, they'd probably stop my retirement check.
Oh, I like your sense of humor.
Well, anyway, I'm from St. Albans, went to BFA. Upon graduation, went to the Maine Maritime Academy, which is an outstanding school for people who are interested in the seagoing profession or seagoing related disciplines.
Ah.
And then I went directly to the Navy and spent 41 years in uniform.
Wow.
Most of the I was very fortunate because most of the time I was in command of ships or a group of ships, and spent most of my time at sea, which to me is what it's all about.
What the Navy's all about, you mean?
Pardon?
When you say you spent most of your time at sea and that's what it's all about, you're talking about the Navy.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Like the people who were aviators, the place where it's all about is flying, submarines.
Yes.
I spent my time in destroyers. I was fortunate. I had command of 4 different ships: a destroyer escort, a missile destroyer, missile cruiser,
Wow.
and a destroyer tender. Then when I made flag officer, I had groups of ships, the amphibious force in the Atlantic, and the military sea lift command, which comprised 163 ships.
Wow.
Then I had various other interesting tours, like the senior member of the Armistice Commission over in Korea, talking to the North Koreans.
Wow.
But all during this career, you had to really work hard. And if one wants to succeed in life, you go where the difficult jobs are, where it's inconvenient, and many times the Navy had to come before the family. You have to have a very understanding wife who accepts that strange philosophy.
Yes.
But as a team, if you buy that philosophy, you get ahead.
And I think that there are rewards for that for you and your spouse and family. They're different from you being there at home all the time.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Well, as the old saying in the Navy, no problems ever take place at the home until you leave. Then it all falls apart.
Oh.
I don't know what that means, but anyway.
Oh, well, I could come up with an answer or two, but well, that sounds like a very fascinating and interesting career you had in the naval forces. However, a lot of that I don't even understand. Like a flag officer, what does that mean?
Well, a flag officer is when you make admiral. Because when you make admiral, you have a flag. It's a blue flag, 1 star for Commodore, 2 stars for Rear Admiral, and that's why they call it flag officers.
Okay.
And the Army Marines are general officers.
Okay.
So anyway, let me put a plug in for young people who aren't too sure what they want to do.
Good idea.
I can't say enough. It'd certainly be worthwhile to consider a tour in the armed forces, any armed force, whether it's 4 years or 6 years. I spent 41 years. I liked it. But you get things like from the military that you don't in civilian life. You get to be exposed and understand leadership, accountability. Those two traits are just as important as civilians as they are in the military. You see the world, you get to meet all kinds of people and understand how to get along with people. My mother used to say, your boss doesn't have to get along with you, you have to get along with your boss. And all these are good sayings. And
yes, they
all
are.
of this experience one gets, a young person just out of high school will get responsibilities in the armed forces that are unreal. Some of your civilian life may go their whole life. It won't get that responsibility that 18-year-old has.
Yes, and learning about personal responsibility, accountability for your actions, and responsibility. Those are key things in all aspects of life.
Oh, yes. And actually, people say, well, the military is so cold. The military is not cold. As I said, I was very fortunate having numerous tours as commanding officer. And you always took in consideration people's feelings. In most cases, you had time. You'd say to yourself, if I was to receive that order, how would I feel? And maybe you could modify a little bit to help. But it's compassion isn't cut cold and dry. People do have says. Before I made, providing it was not a crisis, providing any major decisions, I would get my officers together, we discuss it, pros and cons, and then decide. Teamwork. And there is no one man on the team that is more important than the highest or the lowest.
They depend on you and you depend on them.
Yeah. And the difference is that lives are at stake. And so you screw up and somebody gets hurt.
Yes. And I think probably, excuse me for interrupting you, I think probably everyone on the ship, for instance, understands that.
Oh, yes. And that's why when you give an order, I used to tell people coming aboard, if you get an order, you don't understand it, and providing you aren't going to get hurt or something, you carry it out, then ask a question. Don't stand there and ask questions, because it could conceivably, if you stood and waited, the ship could get further into jeopardy, and instead of losing 10 men, you lose 200. And that's not acceptable.
Right.
You have to have faith in the leaders that whatever order they give is a valid order. You have to have faith.
Yes.
But anyway, so.
Well, those are a lot of qualities that are important in all aspects of life, whether it be your job or your family, friendships, whatever, your country.
Yep. And that's why the old saying, you lead by example, is so important.
Yes. You
never should give an order that you yourself are not able or willing to follow or carry out.
That's a great philosophy. Yep, I concur. And those tools that you're talking about for life. I before the show started, I was telling you about my mom and the things that she taught me. And it's a similar philosophy, not total comparability, but just the work ethic and the responsibility and all that. And that's what we need our parents to be teaching their children today, right?
As I mentioned, my mother had lots of sayings, and I actually followed them in the Navy, some of them.
I believe
she had one, she said, if you don't like somebody, keep looking until you find one small thing you like about that individual. Concentrate on that, and pretty soon you'll find yourself thinking, hey, that person's not so bad after all.
What a great mom.
Yeah, that's right. She taught me a lot about the military.
Yeah, I bet she did.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you just spoke to, Warren, is good for everybody in life. Those are tools for having a productive and a responsible and a rewarding life.
There's another saying that one of my bosses in the Navy had. I think it's the most appropriate today because you keep hearing, oh, that's old. We don't do that. We change that. It's got to be changed. But the saying was, one should be tied to tradition, but not chained. And the more you think about that, that's pretty true.
Tied but not chained.
So you're able to change,
Yes.
but you still got to remember that tradition. That's so much a part of our background.
Oh, yes.
And this country.
Absolutely. We have traditions that have made this country over the years a great place, a great example in the world, and a great place to live your life. And we need to remember some of those traditions and values these days. For sure. That's all very interesting. That's a great message to give to people. I like it a lot.
Talk about little incidents. We certainly aren't going to get any politics tonight. That's the last thing. But you can't help but think about the virus and where it originated from. And in the military, well, the Navy anyway, I went to a school, damage control school, and one of the courses there was what we called NBC warfare, nuclear, biological, chemical warfare. And everybody's pretty knowledgeable about chemical warfare. That took place in World War I, and it was a real disaster. Nuclear warfare, we understand that today, but biological warfare is sort of floats in the background. But when we were taking this course, it really scared you when you realize what that really meant.
Mm-hmm.
And for us who have been sort of exposed to that, you can't help but compare with this virus, how it started over there, and suddenly is all through the world. What could be done today that would cause a similar problem throughout the world without explosions and things like that? This instructor who was talking about biological warfare, he held up a test tube with some liquid, probably water, I hope, in it, and he shook it and he said, I could spread this around, and with a matter of months, it would be all through the world, and it wouldn't cost but a few dollars compared with the explosives, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The point being, this to me was a prime example of that.
Mm-hmm.
Not that people should be running around scared of everything, but people should be aware that this is a possibility. And this goes back to a favorite subject of mine, the Chinese. And of course, we in the Navy pay attention to other world naval forces. And of course, China, as far as I'm concerned, their Navy is just about a spitting image of the U.S. Navy because they have stolen everything.
That's just what I was going to say.
And people got to understand that. It's not, I don't want to talk about that. That's sensitive. Well,
reality.
It's a reality. And my life was dealt in reality. And I think the more people talk about it, the better it is.
Yes, because if no one talks about these things, then probably the majority of people won't have any understanding of what's going on.
I mean, look what the Chinese are doing in the South China Sea. Most people, hopefully in America, are aware of freedom of the seas.
Mm-hmm.
That means no country can claim the oceans or the seas as their own. Everybody has access to it. But the Chinese say the South China Sea, which is the water between China, South Korea belongs to them, and Japan belongs to them. Well, that's no. But they're reclaiming some islands and claiming them as being Chinese.
Well, you know, I'm sorry, go ahead. I don't want
No,
to.
but I'm just saying these things people should be aware of them. We accept it and pretty soon say, oh, well, what's new? Well, it's new. Pretty soon you're going to wake up and there's not that little bit, there's a greater bit. So people, all I'm saying is people should be aware of this, knowledgeable, and have your antennas up.
Absolutely. And I'm sure you know, Warren, that the United Nations wants control of, they want all of the waters of the world to be controlled by the UN. And they want the land in all the countries to be controlled by the United Nations. And that's why we have to be so acutely aware of, excuse me, I don't know if the World Health Organization is involved in that or not,
No.
but these are global entities.
Yeah.
And the United States is independent, so to speak. And they just want control of the world.
Yeah, but the U.S., we ensure people adhere to the international waters. Over in the South China Sea, we, the Navy, send aircraft and ships through there periodically as we send into the Black Sea.
Yes.
Because Russia tends to think that's theirs. And
Russia.
so we go out of our way to make sure that we go into these so-called claim areas. In the old days, 3 miles off the coast was the territorial waters.
Yes.
And that became unrealistic in today's, and that's out to 12 miles. And some countries have claimed fishing rights out to 250 miles. And nobody really enforces that. They can't. But I mean, this just shows that people keep trying to encroach on international law. And thank goodness there are a few countries like the U.S. that won't accept that and will push the claim of international waters.
You know what? Excuse me. My feeling is just leave us alone. Get out of our face. But, you know, it's about control, Warren. It's about control.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And well, that's so 12 miles off the coast of any country.
Correct.
Is considered, what's the name?
They're territorial waters.
Territorial waters. Okay. Okay.
It was 3 miles. Now it moved out for realistic reasons.
Yes.
Because a lot of the countries do offshore mining and things like that.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And they, the United Nations wanted to be able to drill off our coast.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know, just use.
We don't allow anybody inside of 12 miles.
Good. I like that. And the Navy helps to enforce that? Or
Oh,
no?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the Coast Guard, the Navy will pass ships through there to
Periodically.
to test it. And
Well, I
mean,
know.
if push comes to shove, I guess we could put a shot across their bow, but you'd have to think twice before you did that.
Well, I know that we've had, I believe, ships and planes over by the South China Sea.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
No, we periodically we run aircraft and ships into there just to exercise our right.
Let them know we're watching.
And the Chinese have come out. Nobody is fired, but I mean, rules of engagement would say if somebody fired at you, you can fire back for self-protection.
Now, back for a minute, Warren, to the virus, the COVID virus. I personally have no firsthand knowledge But my instincts lead me to feel that this Wuhan, China area where they're saying this virus came from, I believe it was intentional to spread this around the world and to bring this country down.
Well, one can speculate. Obviously, China has said we want to take over the world.
Well, yes.
But I don't want to get into this because then you get political. And
No. But
it's certainly something to keep in the back of your mind.
I'm just saying all the aspects of our nation that have been affected, our economy, our financial, federal financial, system, all the debt. That's what I want to say. The increase in the debt into the, what is it, up to 30 trillion now?
Well, you can become very depressed if you think too much about it.
I know.
But this country is fantastic, and the country is going to survive this so-called mess
because of the people.
The people.
That's people exactly right. Are the guardians.
Well, that goes back to the armed forces. There are other people may have more weapons here or there, but the thing that the United States has and nobody else can even compare is the people, the men and the women in the armed forces. Their ingenuity, their dedication, on and on and on.
Yeah.
Their positive attitudes. And that's why it's good to get into the service and get exposed to positive people like that.
Well, as you said earlier, Warren, there are wonderful life lessons learned in the military. And I'd like to think a sense of accomplishment and pride that you are working on behalf of the safety and the overall benefit of the nation and the people of the nation. And I think, when I was in nursing school at UVM, my mother passed away. She was only in her 40s, and she had gone back to work so that I could be in nursing school, so that my dad and she could have the money for me to go to school. And when she passed away, I thought, oh boy, I mean, it was sad enough to start with to lose my mom. But on top of that, I called my dad and I said, Dad, I've been thinking, I think I'd like to join the Army. And I could be an Army nurse because I was in nursing school. And I said, I think that would be an interesting life. Well, he didn't want me to do it. He didn't think the women at that time were respected enough in the military. That was his philosophy. So because I always minded my parents and listened to what they had to say, I never did it, but I've always regretted it. And that's why it's totally different, I know, but that's why I joined, when I had the opportunity, joined the State Guard and was in that for 11 years, helping the National Guard. It's little compared to your expansive experience, but I bring that up because you're talking to young people.
The National Guard and the Air Guard are outstanding to join because they offer all kinds of opportunities and you still get the smattering of the armed forces.
Yes.
I can't say enough about those two organizations.
I agree.
Let me digress. You're talking about your father. I was going to school during World War II, and I came home one day, I was a junior, and I told my father I wanted to quit school and join the Navy. And he looked at me, he said, that's the funniest thing I've ever heard. You're going to finish school. He was in World War I in France. And so if I had gone off that way, I'd probably never made admiral. So he knew.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, because you had you finished the college education.
Oh, yeah. But yeah. Anyway, we're talking about little red flags. I must mention the North Korea thing.
Please.
As I said, I was that was my first job as a flag officer in Korea. I couldn't imagine what a naval officer was doing in Korea. But anyway, one of my jobs, by the general there, I was assigned the senior member of the Armistice Commission, which was under the United Nations, and I dealt with the North Koreans. I say I because I was the only person that could talk to the North Korean. So I talked to them for 2 years. The thing I want to mention is you haven't heard much about North Korea lately.
No.
But North Korea is still a fuse waiting to go off.
Mm-hmm.
The intention of North Korea is to take over South Korea on their terms. They have not changed since the Korean War, and the only thing impeding them is the United States. So regardless of what they say or they don't say, they're just waiting for an opportunity or the opportunity to take over South Korea.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, don't lose any sleep on it, unless you're over there, but keep in the back of your mind that should be watched as the Chinese problem should be watched.
Oh, big time.
So it's interesting to be in the armed forces because you get exposed.
Around the world.
All of them. And I had the United Nations troops under me over there, along with the United States.
Wow.
So what an experience that was. This little guy coming from St. Albans, Vermont, look what happens.
Oh, wow.
My philosophy always was, if somebody else could do it, why can't I?
Exactly.
So I think then, somebody, well, I don't have the education, or I don't have this, or I don't have that. That's just an excuse. Find out what you need, get it, and take off.
Amen to that.
Because my philosophy is, you ought to, when you go into whatever you do, aim for the stars, and you're going to end up somewhere near there.
Yes, and don't underestimate yourself.
Oh, no. You can do anything you want.
I agree. I do agree. And I think that is a wonderful philosophy, a really great philosophy that we need to instill into the young people today.
Now, since we're certainly talking about a varied number of subjects.
That's okay.
But,
I wanted to, if I may, North Korea is not friendly to the United States, as I understand it, but
absolutely not.
But South Korea is, correct?
South Korea is a fantastic country.
Yeah.
They're some of our greatest friends in the world. And if the hostiles were at my back, I'd just soon have South Koreans on my back watching it.
Really?
The North Koreans, the problem with many Americans, probably most of us, is we think the whole world thinks like we do.
Oh, no.
Unfortunately, they don't. In the Oriental culture, it doesn't have to be done tomorrow or next year or 5 years from now, as long as it gets done. We Americans want it done yesterday. That's my problem too. The Brits, they'll do it tomorrow. But anyway, so just because there's nothing exciting going on in North Korea right today, they're there. And don't ever, ever, ever forget it. I wanted to mention one other thing.
Yes.
When you're skipper of Navy ships, you always have what are called rules of engagement. That tells you, the CO, what you can and can't do. The rules of engagement are built, promulgated from political agreements, current situations, common sense. And basically, as I said, it tells you what you can do and what you can't do. If you can shoot or if you can't shoot. One rule that's always the same is you can always self-defend yourself. Regardless of the situation, if somebody shoots at you, you better shoot back and shoot them down.
I was just going to ask a question relative to that, and that is, as the skipper, I'll call the commander, what have the admiral on the ship, in charge, can you independently determine that it's time to shoot?
I'm going to address that.
Oh, okay.
But as a comment, when you're skipper of a ship, you're probably next to God. Anybody who hasn't gone to sea would understand that. People who haven't gone to sea think I probably should be zapped.
Oh, no.
But the commanding officer, captain of a ship, Navy ship, merchant ship, is the nearest thing to God there is. That's undebatable. That's it. That's tradition. That's history. Anyway, I was commanding officer of a destroyer escort. That was my first command. And they're fantastic little ships. They're about half the size of a destroyer and good firepower.
And your protection for the...
Pardon?
Your kind of protection for the destroyer?
Well, you work with the carriers mostly as escorts, anti-submarine, stuff like that. And this was during one of the missile cruises in Cuba. And I was in Newport, Rhode Island, and my boss called me in and said, you are to go down to Key West and support the commander down there, because Key West is right next to Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good. So down we went. The destroyer escort, we had 135 men, good firepower, fast ship, and went down there and reported to him. And I was out in the op area the next day, and he got a call to come into port right away. So it came in, and I went up to see the captain who was on duty, and he said, we just got word that a merchant ship, U.S. merchant ship, got strafed, machine gunned, probably by Cubans. So I want you to go down there and find out what's going on. So before we got to Cuba, we got what was called the rules of engagement. They were top secret. And I read them, and I couldn't understand them. I figured I was fairly intelligent. I read them a couple more times, I still couldn't. So I got my XO, and I said, hey, XO, read this thing, see if you can understand it. And he read it a couple times. So anyway, so when I went in to see the captain, when he said, well, that's it, I said, Captain, I got a question. I said, I don't understand the rules of engagement. He said, you aren't supposed to. And he walked over to the big chart of the Straits of Florida and Cuba, and he said, it'll probably take a great big X. And he put a X on the chart, and he said, that might be you, and then we'll clarify them. And I said to myself, Jesus, like hell. And so I went back to the ship, we got underway, and I got the guys in the wardroom. I said, this is what we're going to do. And I said, if any planes come over, and these are propeller planes then, I said, and I told the weapons officer, I said, you're looking up there, we're at general quarters, of course. I said, if you see any little orange specks on the wings, I said, you open fire without me telling you to open fire. I said, you damn well better shoot it down.
Now, those little orange things, were
That
they?
was machine guns, if they
Okay,
were.
okay.
Yes, sir, yes, sir. And he said, well, the rules of engagement don't say that. I said, I would rather be known for the guy who starts World War III than lost 135 men on his ship.
Yep.
Now, yes, I stuck my neck out. People could criticize me. Today, I'm sure people are wringing their hands. But when you have got the bag and you got to make a decision, you damn well better make it and put some common sense into it.
Life is about making decisions.
But you can imagine the commotion that if
yeah.
you shot the guy down. But anyway, I would take my licks. It was my responsibility. But at least I could look at myself in the mirror
Yes.
and say, by God, you did something.
Yes, well, you reasoned it out, right?
And the weapons officer was in a real sweat.
Oh, well, you've certainly had some really interesting experiences. And as you look back, do you think about it very often?
Oh, certain incidences, you think about the funny ones. You don't too much think about the crises and things. But we had another one that off of Lebanon, no, off of Israel, and this was the Arab-Israeli war. That was a real shooting war. We almost got into that one.
Oh yeah, that goes on.
But anyway, so they evacuated the Soviets from Egypt on a merchant ship. And I was sent down to rendezvous with this merchant ship off of Egypt and escort it back up to Greece. And there was an old ship, coal-fired smoke coming out of the stack. But the State Department, all the Russians and the State Department were all aboard there. They had one great big party. And we were following in the wake of the ship. And all you saw were these people carousing around the decks, hooting and hollering. And after a couple of days, they ran out of booze and they all collapsed on the deck.
Oh no!
And that ended the excitement. But anyway, sometimes the funny things.
Yes. Well, it's good to have a few of those along the way in life, right? Well, you've been to so many areas around the world. You know, that's, I mean, it's a job and it's work, but it's also an adventure.
Oh, yes.
And that gives you a whole perspective about the world that many of us don't have the opportunity for because we haven't done that or been there.
Yeah, I'll tell you, when we were in Volos, Greece, I had command of a missile destroyer, and we tied up right downtown. And for those people who have gone to Europe, you know, down on the waterfront is where all the bars are, and the people come down, the locals come down at night to have a drink and chat and things like that. And on my ship, at colors at night, we'd have the guard back there, and then we played the bugle, colors, and the flag came down. And this particular night, the first night we got into Volos, Greece, we were right down in the heart of the downtown, and it looked like the whole population was there.
Wow.
And colors came, and blew attention, color guard went back, and they started playing colors, pulling the flag down, and every single civilian, Greek, stood at attention.
Oh.
You talk about my crew being impressed.
Oh, yes.
All these Greek people thought enough of the United States that they stood up at attention when the flag came down.
That must have been so moving.
Oh, yes, it was.
Wow.
And it happened every night we were there.
The respect.
Yes.
For your job and for our country, yes.
And people here in this country got to understand that the world looks up to us. Maybe they don't look up to you, they look up to the country as a whole. And anytime we do dumb things, they go, what are you doing? Well,
and that's a great point that you make. Which makes me think about how extremely important it is that the American people stand up for our country and respect our country and have a certain amount of pride in what this country is as it's compared with other places around the world.
And you don't see any lines of people waiting to get out of the United States.
No. We have been given a gift in this country many years ago, and but those people, the founders of this great country, knew that what they gave us would only be preserved if we, through the generations, preserved it.
Yeah.
So it's we talked about responsibility. That's one of the, we have about 15 minutes.
There's another little thing people don't realize, Americans don't realize, that a Navy ship is the United States of America.
You bet.
When you walk on that ship, you're in the United States of America. So if I'm tied up, we are tied up at a pier in any country, we always have you're tied up with lines, and the accommodation ladder or the brow goes down onto the pier.
Mm-hmm.
And where the brow comes aboard the ship is the quarterdeck. You have a watch there, an officer, a couple of enlisted men, and you may or may not have a sentry down on the pier.
Mm-hmm.
But most cases you don't, unless you expect some trouble or something.
Mm-hmm.
But so say you're there in the middle of the night, in the middle of the day, it doesn't make any difference when, and down the pier comes somebody running like mad, and behind them are a couple armed individuals,
Oops.
guards or whatever it is. They come down and they come running up on your ship.
Ooh.
The second they stop, they step on your ship, they're protected. And if those people can continue up the brow, you can shoot them.
Really?
That's right. 100% justified. They are not allowed aboard your ship unless you allow them. Of course, you have to say, get off and motion.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that makes sense.
The point is, that's U.S. territory. Once they're on, they're protected by the United States, even to the point of shooting the other people. And we used to have drills. I had drills in ports, and we'd break out fire hoses, and the idea of washing the people off with 100 pounds pressure. But
Give them a
anyway,
little shower.
yeah. I mean, you may end up, if these people came aboard, they might be thugs or something, and you'd end up by escorting them physically off the ship. But until you did that, they're unprotected.
So when the ship was in dock,
Alongside the pier.
yeah, you don't have a gate on the walkway that goes up?
No, not a gate. You have a brow or accommodation ladder that goes onto the pier. But you have people aboard the ship that would prevent people from. Nobody can just walk aboard a Navy ship.
But it's just for the sailors, so to speak.
Yeah, or people have legitimate business.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you have visitors, open house sometimes.
Oh, yeah. You know, in New York City, I believe it's the Intrepid is there. I was on that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, in fact, a friend of mine was on that ship as a sailor.
yeah. Well, they've done a good job there.
Yes.
Keeping a carrier up is tough. The maintenance.
I bet.
Oh, big bucks.
I bet. And so it's a lesson in itself. So folks, if you happen to be in New York City, look for the USS, right?
Yep.
Intrepid. It's quite an education to get on a ship and see what it's, see what it's about. And I want to reiterate what you said earlier a couple of times. What a great opportunity it is for young men and women to consider military service.
Yeah. Well, I can follow that by saying that there's a very plus side that I had never ever intended to come back to St. Albans. But if you spend X number of years in the military, there's a lot to coming back to your hometown, bringing back to that area what you've learned throughout the world and your various leadership positions.
Yes.
We came back here because the job I had lined up sort of fell through for political reasons, not mine. But anyway, my wife, when we came, we needed a place to draw a deep breath. So we still knew a few people here when we came back. And then my wife said, well, get it through your head that when we move this time is going to be the last time, because we moved 23 times.
Oh, my goodness.
So
Wow.
long story short, so why not devote my time to the community and not work for the Beltway Bandit in Washington? Sure, you make big money for a couple of years, then they say sayonara. So anyway, that's what I did. And I think I do the same thing again. So what I'm saying is a person who gets the most out of the service can come back and apply that to the community and to help people. All you got to do is stand someplace and look around, and you can see all kinds of things that need to be done.
Yes. Well, because you have certain, well, I'll call them skills, but basic things in your life from your experience that almost naturally guide you toward being observant about things that are occurring or
Yes,
not
yes.
or not occurring
Yeah.
that maybe should be happening. And I know you've been extremely involved in, I don't know all of what you've been involved in locally, but I know you've been involved to a great extent.
Most everything.
Most everything.
Well, I wanted to stay busy, and it was fun doing things,
Yes.
accomplishing things. And there's so many fantastic people in the community that jump aboard.
Yes. So they're looking for an opportunity.
Yes, yes. I mean, all the guys that have been in the service missed the service.
Yes, I'm sure.
And when guys would retire after 20, 25, 30 years, I would say, if I asked you, name 2 things that you were really upset about, you'd have a hard time doing it. You forget all the crises and the bad times you had. You remember the good and the positive times.
Well, assuming that you're a person who dwells on the positive,
Yes.
there are some people,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
accentuate the positive. That's a good thing.
Well, I used to tell the guys, I don't care how serious it is. And I'm not laughing about people getting hurt or killed or things like that.
Mm-mm.
But regardless of how serious it is, you got to see some funny thing about it so you can dwell upon that instead of the bad part.
Humor is healthy.
Yes, yes. And the guys thought that was pretty good.
Well, you come up with a lot of good ideas of philosophy. And isn't it our way of thinking and our philosophy of life and the way that we relate with other people and the way that we delve into our work responsibilities, all of these things make us who we are.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the positive attitude, you know, then you really have to work on developing that, because life, you know, we kind of create, even when life is tough,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
you
Oh,
know,
yeah. It is.
and we all know, like when life is tough, we've
Yeah.
all been there or we're there now, and yet you can't let that take you down.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard. But
We had in the Mediterranean, of course, the prime area there is the French Riviera, Cannes, France. The worst thing a person could do is to be on a ship and pump bilges or pump oil onto the beach in Cannes. You can't imagine the repercussions. So when you went there, you always anchored out. And so you made sure nobody touched the bilge pump except a certain person or whatever it was. And one time we were anchored off Cannes, and one of the guys, well, screwed up. And we found out pump bilges. And when a horrible thing like that happens, you're supposed to report it. it goes, actually probably goes up to God,
Mm-hmm.
because he gets involved too. But anyway, when I found out about it, I got the navigator, we went up the bridge quickly, and we found that the tide or the currents were going out to the Mediterranean,
Mm-hmm.
and the wind was blowing out. So 99% out of 100, whatever oil went over probably went out into the Mediterranean.
Oh, my.
And I thought, my God, if we report this, it'll be the worst crisis you're ever involved with. The chances are not going to happen. So I got all the guys together and I said, now we're supposed to report this, and you all know what's going to happen if we do. I said, we're going to tell a white lie and not say anything. So they all thought that was a pretty good idea. I said, I'm not trying to cover up anything. I'm just trying to eliminate a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, that night I had invited the French commanding officer of the air station there. And the French Air Force flew patrols out into the Med every day. And we were eating dinner that night, and he was sitting to my right. And he said, you know, a funny thing happened. He said, one of my planes reported an oil slick way out in the Med. I said, is that right? I said, somebody must have pumped fuel. But it was all out in the Med, so that was okay. But anyway, so I almost choked on my milk anyway.
Oh, dear.
So the other guys at the table did too. But the point is, you got to use common sense. What was the sense of causing this big flail for no reason?
That's true. Well, that's called rationale,
Yeah,
you know,
white lie.
reasoning things out.
Yeah.
And,
But don't tell too many of them.
okay, I won't. Well, listen, we're down to just 3.5 minutes. Time flies when you're having fun, Warren. So is there anything else in the last few minutes that, that you wanted to be sure to relate tonight?
Well, other than that, to say that I had a fantastic career because my philosophy was if somebody else can do it, why can't me?
Mm-hmm.
And I would do every single thing the same way. I wouldn't change one single thing. I think that's what any successful person should be able to say.
And even if there are things that happen along the way, that maybe weren't as positive as you might have liked, you can't focus on regrets in life.
Well, I can tell you a few of them, but
well, we all have a few of those, but you can't make them the focus of your life, because then you do yourself a big disservice, and also maybe the people around you.
yeah.
You know, so positive is the way to go, even through tough times like we're having now.
Yeah, but we got to understand that we're going to get out of this. The country is strong enough that a few idiots are not going to change.
Let's hope. Yes.
No, they won't.
Okay.
There's too many good people. All you got to do is go in the service and see those people. And they far outweigh, I guess that'd be many of the other types.
Yeah, my second husband was at Iwo Jima.
Oh, yeah.
He's about 96 now, I think. And he's talked with me about that. He's up in Maine. I keep in touch with him. You know, he's a good guy, and
Anybody who's on
he was
Iwo Jima,
20
somebody special.
he was 21 years old, and they landed and they had to climb up these rock formations, and he said 10 out of 100 came back.
Oh, yeah.
He was one of the lucky ones. Anyway, listen, we got the last few seconds. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I've been looking forward to this, Warren. It's been very interesting to have you on the show, and thank you so much for your wonderful service to our nation.
I'd like to do it all again tomorrow.
Well, you mean your service?
Yes, I'll go back in.
Yeah, okay.
At 92, I don't know.
Okay. Folks, thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I did. And I'll have another interesting show for you next Tuesday evening. Have a great week ahead. Stay positive. Stand up. Okay. Good night.